Hello and welcome back to the channel. So today I want to discuss a somewhat common trope, one that I see some people want to emulate every so often, and that is the trope of a blind fighter. So for those who don't know the trope I'm talking about, it's pretty much what it says on the tin. A character who, for whatever reason, has lost use of their vision and yet is still a capable combatant and fully able to hold their own on the battlefield. So before we can really begin in earnest, we first have to understand what it means to detect a creature in PF2. In Pathfinder, there are multiple degrees of detection that you can have with a specific creature, which determines how easily you will detect that creature. Starting with observed, this is the most basic degree of detection and the one in which most characters operate under most of the time. Observed means you can just perceive the creature, often with sight, and imposes no penalties on actually attempting to attack it. The next level down we have is hidden. This is where you can't physically perceive the creature, but you do know which square they're in. For example, if they're hiding inside a barrel, you can't see the creature, but you know that they're in the barrel somewhere. In this case, whenever you want to target the creature with anything, whether it be a spell attack, a normal attack, some kind of effect, or anything else like that, you first need to attempt a DC 11 flat check. And if you fail that check, you just miss automatically no matter what your actual roll is. Next up we have undetected, which is basically an upgrade to hidden, where you don't even know which square the creature is in. You do know they're around somewhere, but you don't know specifically where, which means you first need to choose a square to target, and then even if you choose the correct square, you still have to make that DC 11 flat check because you can't perceive them properly. And finally we have unnoticed, which is where you have no idea the creature is even present and essentially can't do anything to it because you don't know it's there. There is also a secret fifth degree of detection not listed here, which is concealed. Concealed is like kind of a subcategory of observed and acts as a less severe form of hidden. You know where the creature is, and you can mostly make them out, but they're obscured in some way, for example by foliage or by mist. To target them, instead of the DC 11 flat check for hidden, you only need to make a DC 5 flat check, which is a much better success rate, but still something you have to contend with, especially if you're targeting creatures often, which most player characters are going to be doing. The other thing we have to cover are the different senses available in the game. There are three types of senses: precise, imprecise, and vague. Precise sense is the most basic of senses, and most creatures will have vision as a precise sense. This allows you to observe creatures automatically. If a creature is standing there, you can just see it and thus that creature will be observed. Next we have imprecise senses, which is the next step down. It lets you detect that a creature is there and where a creature is, but doesn't let you perceive that creature in the same way a precise sense would. Thus, when using an imprecise sense, creatures can be at most hidden from you. You cannot observe somebody with an imprecise sense. And finally we have vague senses, which are the least specific type of sense and really only lets you know a creature is somewhere nearby, making it undetected. It doesn't tell you which square they are in, or allow you to perceive them basically at all beyond the fact that they exist. Before we really dive into all the options that PF2 has, I want to give a quick shout out to these vision assistance items, one of a number of subcategories of items specifically built for characters with physical impairments. These eyes are essentially replacement eyes that a character can use if they, for whatever reason, have lost use of one of their own, and function as if that character had eyes in the first place. Now, I'm not really going to be covering these in this video because I feel like if you're going to play a blind fighter, you want them to be actually functionally blind. And just kind of saying, oh yeah, my character was blind, but they have procured some prosthetic eyes, so now they're totally okay. While that can be cool, it's not really the vibe that I'm going for in this particular video. So to begin, the options that PF2 provides for blind characters, we start with ancestries and the rare flesh form. They have a level 5 uncanny awareness, which grants you an imprecise motion sense out to 30 feet. Next we have the Kushishri, another rare ancestry, who actually have a base feature called empathic sense, which grants them an imprecise sense out to 15 feet, which detects non-wingless creatures. Next we have Beastkin, another rare option, but this one is a versatile heritage, and they have a level 5 greater animal sense, which lets you gain an imprecise echolocation or tremor sense out to 30 feet. However, notable about this feat is that you can take it again and improve this imprecise sense to a precise one, gaining a precise echolocation of 30 feet or a precise tremor sense of 30 feet. Next we have the Duskwalker Versatile Heritage. This one is only uncommon, and a level 5 gives us Life Sense, which gives us Life Sense as an imprecise sense out to 10 feet. And finally we have the Oread, another uncommon versatile heritage, which at level 9 gives us Earth Sense, which gives us a imprecise tremor sense out to 30 feet. There also exists the rare background magical experiment, which grants us one special ability as part of our background, and one of the listed options is an imprecise sense of 30 feet. And it lists a few options, but it seems that you can choose any sense that you would so like, whether it be scent, tremor sense, thought sense, etc. Next up we have our class feats, and the first and most obvious is going to be Blind Fight, available to fighters, investigators, rangers, and rogues at level 8. This allows us to ignore the effect of the concealed condition and reduce the hidden condition down to effectively concealed, ignoring the flat foot that hidden usually applies, and also allowing us to succeed at a mere DC 5 flat check instead of the normal DC 11. Next we have Suicide at level 8 again, available to bards and divine or occult sorcerers. This grants us an imprecise spirit sense out to a range of 60 feet, and upgrades at level 12 for both classes to Shared Sight, which is a meta magic that we can apply on any spell that we cast to an ally, and grants that ally the effects of our soul sight for a minute. Next we have Thought Sense at level 8 available to psychics, and this grants us a vague thought sense out to 30 feet. Now remember that vague is the least useful of these senses. It only lets you know that a creature is around and not which square it is in. However, during the Psychic's Unleashed Psyche, this thought sense is upgraded to an imprecise sense as opposed to a vague one, allowing you to make creatures hidden to you using it. Finally, I also want to give a shout out to the Summoner, because their Eidolon is technically a different character, even though the two are intrinsically linked. Just because the Summoner is blind doesn't necessarily mean the Eidolon is blind. So you can play a blind character without being entirely useless in combat, especially if you don't have any of the feats which give you imprecise sense. Additionally, all summoners, as a base effect, and share senses with their eidolon, which for an action causes you to lose all sensory information from your body, but can sense through your eidolon's body. This does work like normal senses, so you can perceive and target as you normally would, which is useful for a summoner who wants to be able to cast spells. They can share senses through their eidolon, and instead of their own blind senses, rely on their eidolon's vision to do the work for them. Next, I want to cover a number of items in PF2 to help those who are visually impaired. Starting with the reading ring at level 1, which allows you to read words by touching them, as if, for example, they were written in Braille. Next we have the Diviner's Nose training level 9. This is an uncommon item. It is a permanent item, and it grants you an imprecise scent out to 30 feet. Next we have the Potion of Echoes, also at level 9, which, when you drink it, allows you to use your hearing as a precise sense after you seek. Now, this does not mean that your hearing is a precise sense permanently, so you do have to spend that action seeking every round if you want to use your hearing as a precise sense. But this is a consumable which gives you a precise, non-vision sense. And the last of the items I want to cover is the Mummified Bat at level 10. This is a talisman you affix to a weapon, and when you activate it, you gain the benefit of blind fight for a minute, which, as we remember, basically allows you to ignore concealment and treat hidden as concealed. Finally, there are a few spells I want to cover which can grant an imprecise sense, starting with Rapid Adaptation level 2, which allows you, if you choose the forest option, to gain an imprecise sense with a range of 30 feet. Now, this spell does require you to be in the environment in question, but if you're in a lot of forests, this can be a very cheap and effective way to gain an imprecise sense for an hour. Next we have Moth Suffer, a spell level 3, which, among a number of other benefits, also grants us an imprecise sense of 30 feet, which detects freshly spilled blood and rotten flesh. Basically, the things that would come up in combat. And finally, we have Ooze Form at level 3, which transforms you into an ooze and gives you, amongst a number of other benefits, a no vision, so you are blinded, which isn't going to be a problem for a blind character, and a precise motion sense of 30 feet. So, as always, I want to end with how I would approach building a fully blinded character in PF2. And the way I see it, there are sort of two directions you can take this. One, which is much more difficult, requires a lot of GM buy-in, but really leans into that blinded aspect of the character. And another, which is much easier and most likely more sensible as well. The reason the difficult option requires a lot of GM buy-in is because it takes advantage of the rare versatile heritage. The beast can feed greater animal sense is, as far as I can tell, the only way in the entire system to gain a permanent precise sense that is not vision-based. In this case, either echolocation or tremor sense, depending on what kind of animal you decide to base your beastkin on. However, because you need to take greater animal senses twice to get the precise sense, one to get an imprecise sense, and the second time to upgrade it to precise, it's going to be a very long time before you have a precise sense. Level 9 at the earliest, unless you happen to be playing with Ancestral Paragon. So, in order to help bridge that gap, I would also recommend convincing your GM to let you take a magical experiment as a backup and get a second imprecise sense with a range of 30 feet. Probably something that isn't going to overlap with a greater animal sense, so a scent or a thought sense or something like that, which lets you have at least something to help you target foes until you get that precise sense at level 9. The one glaring weakness of all this, other than the time it takes to acquire the necessary feats to get a precise sense, is of course that these senses are limited. While normal characters have an essentially unlimited vision, your imprecise sense from magical experiment and the sense from greater animal sense is limited to precisely 30 feet, which means anything beyond 30 feet you are unable to sense. And because of this, a ranged character is going to be very, very difficult to play. While it is doable, you have to stay within 30 feet of everything, and that gives you a little bit of space to maneuver. But it's going to be much easier to just have a bullet character, and then you don't have to worry so much about precisely staying within that 30 feet of range, since you're going to be consistently next to your opponent. This works well because we also want to take a blind fight. Not only does this help us against creatures that we can't sense for whatever reason with our imprecise or precise senses, it also negates the flat-footed check, with the flat-footed condition, I should say, from hidden opponents, which is going to be everyone from beyond 30 feet. While the problems with this path are certainly numerous, it is worth mentioning that this is probably the most archetypical blind fighter you can get. Someone who has no use of their eyes, but uses a different sense, like tremor sense or echolocation, to really still be effective on the battlefield. However, if you want to forego all that work, or if your GM, for whatever reason, isn't quite on board with the idea of you taking two rare options as your character creation, you can always just play a summoner, because as mentioned, the Eidolon's shared senses allows you to perceive through your Eidolon instead of yourself, allowing you to take advantage of your Eidolon's eyesight in lieu of your own. So you can still have a lot of fun roleplay moments outside of combat with being a blind character, and still explore that in a way that doesn't sort of negate the concept entirely, but still be able to be an effective combatant in combat and take a relatively minor penalty in comparison to other full-sided player characters, and especially in comparison to the previous option of the fully blind fighter. So that's all for this week's video. I think while the blind fighter can be a cool archetype, PF2 is not really the system built for it. If you really want to lean into the blind fighter and go the difficult route with the rare options that I discussed, it requires both a lot of GM buy-in and probably a high-level campaign to really see the effects of it and not just kind of be a gimped version of a character that drags the party down. However, if you really want to go for it and you have this situation that aligns to make it happen, I think it can be a very fun archetype to work through and play with. So, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you come back next time to see what I have in store. The Kineticist is going to be coming out soon, so I'll probably have a video or two going through it and seeing what I like about that new class. And until then, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a lovely day.